Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I am Dr. Claudia Albers, Planet X research and professional physicist. And today I'd like to bring to you another one of my articles. This one is entitled Planet X and Gravitational Vortices, Hurricanes, Tornadoes, and Waterspouts. Now, I have written several articles and books showing that the solar system has been invaded by objects which are members of a huge system of dead stars, planets, and moons, which because of their energy depleted state have low gravitational influence and draw energy from other objects which have more energy than they do. You may look at article 244 entitled The Planet X System, Destroyer of Star Systems, and article 339 entitled Planet X and the Interstellar Medium, Can We Leave the Solar System? Even though they have a low gravitational influence, they still have some gravitational influence, which can be seen from the vortex type connections which they are able to make with the sun when inside the sun's corona. And here you see one of these objects, obviously a spherical object. It looks dark. It is inside the sun's corona. And as you can see, it's making a vortex connection with the sun. And here's another one. This one is from a more recent image from September 27, 2018, and Scott Sion again caught another one of these objects in the sun's corona. As you can see, it is making a vortex connection with the sun. So it's pulling matter from the sun through this vortex, and there seems to actually be two vortices, one that seems to connect to the side of the object and another one that seems to connect to right below the object. And here's a close-up of that, and you again it looks like there are two vortices there connecting to this object. And here's another one. This one's from 2012, but you can clearly see that there's an object there where you can see the curvature of the object. You can see that it's a spherical object from this image. This is the 193 angstrom image. This is the 171 angstrom. And this is the 304. You can see that the thinnest part of the vortex looks dark in the 171 and the 193, but it doesn't look dark in the 304. There is some material around that darker vortex, and here all the material seems to be the same color in the 304 angstrom image. Now the 304 angstrom light comes from the chromosphere, or the top of the chromosphere, and that's the layer of the sun below the corona, which seems to be in the liquid phase. So it's denser than the corona. The corona is basically the atmosphere. The chromosphere is like the ocean on the sun. And so it seems that the sun, or this vortex, comes from deeper within the sun. So these objects seem to pull matter from the chromosphere through that vortex connection. We also see vortices on Earth. Water usually forms a vortex when it is pulled into a drain. In this case, the Earth's gravitational attraction exerted through the hole in the bottom of a sink causes the water to flow down into the drain in the form of a vortex. The vortex always has a hollow or empty space in its center because the gravitational interaction seems to generate a stationary sound wave with decaying amplitude and the central minimum. And you may look at article 348 entitled Venus Bulge, Gravitational Waves and Hollow Planets. Thus, the gravitational effect a stellar core has on a planet like Venus produces a gravitational wave as shown here in this diagram. The wave decreases in radius and increases in height as the stellar core approaches the planet. So you can see the stellar core here, quite far from the planet, creates this wave, which is basically a ring around a central minimum. So this is the first maximum of this wave if we consider the center as the central minimum. And then as the stellar core approaches the planet, then this wave increases in height and decreases in radius until the stellar core is very close. That turns into a vortex. Now, if such objects come just as close to the Earth's surface as they do to the Sun, then we can expect the same vortices to form under them on Earth. And here's the water vortices that form in a basin of water if there is a hole at the bottom. And these form because the Earth exerts a gravitational force on the water and pulls it down through the hole. And that causes the water to move down into the hole. But it has to move around the central space, the central hole, or where the gravitational minimum will occur, because that's the way the gravitational interaction is. It always creates a central minimum. And so on Earth, we have other types of gravitational vortices which seem to form even without any celestial object approaching the surface of the Earth, although their presence will also create these vortices. These natural vortices are hurricanes, tornadoes, and waterspouts. And here we see a hurricane, and it has an eye, and the eye is a space in the center where there is no wind circulation, just like a water vortex, indicating that this is a gravitational vortex as well. In the case of a hurricane, the vortex is very wide, so that the cloud formation associated with it is not often seen following the air circulation all the way to the ground, in the same way that it occurs with tornadoes. This seems to be due to the fact that tornadoes form tighter vortices. This would seem to indicate that the gravitational fields associated with tornadoes are smaller than those associated with hurricanes. Smaller, but not necessarily weaker. Now, a tornado forms a vortex where cloud formation associated with a fast circulation of air can be seen all the way to the ground. This is actually pulling air upwards, but it's going upwards in the form of a spiral, because there has to be a central hollow, as always with gravitational vortices. And here's a waterspout. It's also a gravitational vortex, and water can actually be seen spiraling. You can see the spiral that the water is forming as it moves upwards into the sky. And the reason why it would do that is because there is a gravitational force that's pulling the water upwards, but it has to move around in a spiral around the central hole that is always there whenever we have a gravitational force, because there is a wave which is associated with that gravitational force, which has a central minimum. The vortex associated with a waterspout has the least width of all three types of vortices, indicating that it is the weakest of all three. Now, these storms can be produced by a sudden large number of solar wind particles entering the Earth's atmosphere. If these particles have more gravitational energy than Earth's atmospheric particles, and the energy does not flow out of the region fast enough, it leads to the creation of an isolated higher gravitational energy region in the atmosphere, resulting in ionization of atmospheric particles in that region with an outer electron layer surrounding it. This occurs because the gravitational field causes positive ions and electrons to repel. The increased gravitational field causes electrons to leave the atoms. The atoms become ions and will attract, thus creating a region of higher density than is normal at that altitude. The electrons flow to the outer edge of the region and isolated from the rest of the atmosphere. This creates a gravitational anomaly in the Earth's atmosphere, which exerts a force on matter around it. The matter starts moving toward the region and circulating around the central minimum of the gravitational wave associated with the gravitational anomaly, thus creating a storm. And this is illustrated here, how A large amount of solar wind particles coming in causes ionization in the ionosphere. It causes this region to gain gravitational energy, and if the gravitational energy cannot move away from the region fast enough, it actually creates a gravitational anomaly where there will be an outer layer of electrons that actually isolates the region and then causes this to exert a gravitational force on matter around it and on the Earth itself, and thus a vortex forms. Now, it's also possible to create such a region in the upper atmosphere artificially, which is most likely the way it is being done nowadays, as the sun does not seem to be emitting any light anymore. And if that is the case, it most likely cannot produce any solar wind. The fact that it went dark over a northern region in Russia for 3 hours, whilst the sun simulation system failed due to stellar core debris dust entering the atmosphere, was a strong indication that the sun is no longer emitting visible light. And you may look at article 291 entitled "The Sun Disappears, Day Turns into Night." In addition, the sky always seems to be darker when we look straight upwards than when we look closer to the horizon, which is only possible if the atmosphere is being illuminated from within by the sun simulation system, and the sun is no longer illuminating it from above. And you may look at article 351 entitled "The Sun is No Longer Shining" for more details. If the sun was illuminating the atmosphere from above, the sky would always look lighter blue around the sun's position. So if the sun was in the midday position, we'd expect this region around the sun to look lighter blue than anywhere else. But this does not occur. No matter what position the sun is in, this region in the sky straight upwards above our eyes, if we look up, always looks darker blue. And the reason, the only reason that occurs is that the atmosphere that we are looking through is being illuminated from within. The sun is not illuminating the atmosphere from above here, which means that space is dark here. All around the Earth, there's only light inside the atmosphere. And so when we look through the thinner region of the atmosphere, when we look straight up, the fact that we have darkness above the atmosphere is more easily perceptible. The sky seems darker. Then if we look in this direction, where we look through a much wider part of the atmosphere, so this is a much thicker layer of atmosphere. So the darkness that is over here is not as perceptible. So the sky doesn't look as dark to us. So this means that the sun is not illuminating the atmosphere from above. So we have darkness above the atmosphere. It is also possible to artificially create a region of higher gravitation in the atmosphere by illuminating the atmosphere at the correct altitude with a laser. The light should be in the frequency which creates energy transitions for the most abundant elements in the atmosphere. Since nitrogen and oxygen are the most abundant elements in the Earth's atmosphere, illuminating the atmosphere with laser light with the frequencies which correspond to the absorption spectrum of nitrogen and oxygen should result in atoms of these elements gaining gravitational energy and thus creating a region of higher gravitational field in the upper atmosphere, which will then exert a force on the Earth and produce a vortex, which will be observed as a hurricane, a tornado, or a waterspout, depending on the intensity of the gravitational anomaly produced. If the target region is illuminated with other light frequencies, the energy is absorbed as heat rather than as gravitational energy. And you may look at article 337 entitled "Heat and Gravitational Photon Energy." And this is illustrated with this image. We have a laser satellite from orbit, and it's aiming its laser beam at a region in the ionosphere, which then becomes ionized, and a region of high gravitational energy develops, and therefore a region of high gravitational field, which then creates a gravitational anomaly, which then results in a vortex. Now, although gravitational vortices can be artificially created in the Earth's atmosphere with lasers, the vortices which will result are not likely to be as strong as those created by a celestial object. If an object which is still able to generate energy in its core were to come very close to Earth, and if that object was larger than Earth, its gravitational attraction would be able to lift most of the Earth's atmosphere and liquid water from its surface. The only reason why stellar cores do not have this effect is because they are gravitationally weak due to their energy depleted state, and because they are no longer able to generate energy in their cores. And this is illustrated here, how a planetary object with a living core and larger than the Earth would produce a gravitational force on the Earth which is so strong that it would create a vortex, but this vortex would be very wide, and it would be able to very quickly lift most of the Earth's atmosphere and liquid water from its surface. And so the object would gain all that water and all that atmosphere from the Earth. So in conclusion, gravitational vortices such as hurricanes, tornadoes, and waterspouts can be both naturally and artificially created in the Earth's atmosphere, or arise as a result of a Planet X object or stellar core having come into the Earth's atmosphere. They can be naturally produced by the arrival of a large number of solar wind particles, and can be artificially created through the application of laser technology from orbit. The vortices created by celestial objects, especially those that are still living or not energy depleted, have the potential to be a lot stronger than those created artificially. As the stellar cores reaching Earth increase in energy, their effects will increase until these become cataclysmic. And these are the references. This is Dr. Claudia Albers, Planet X physicist. Thank you for watching.